Right. So my name is Pradeep Gangavne, and along with me, we will have Sankarshan from the EV team who will speak on Mark Studio, the revolutionary blockchain platform, which is making all the buzz in Web 3.0. Later in the webinar, we will also have a fireside chat of Mr. Palash from Dive and Ms. Shailaja from Samicron. So let me start by introducing this simple yet powerful term, which is trust, right? Now, trust sits at the epicenter of business dealings and transactions, especially in India, where relationships and credibility are deeply rooted in our culture. Now, across industry, we see that trust serves as the foundation for business growth and sustainability. However, there's an increasing concern today about the systematic corrosion of trust. From fake degree certificates to counterfeit products, every day we are exposed to instances that raise doubts about the authenticity of documents and records. Now, in the digital world, right, where data moves at a lightning speed, the potential for forgery has been growing on at an increasing space. Right? Foundation of trust, right, is shaken. The value of businesses, right, uh, that diminishes in the eyes of customers, right. So, how do we address this growing concern? But before we address this, right, let's first look into the core principles of trust in the digital world. These are immutability. Now, if a trust is broken, right, then it is not immutable. Similarly, a record, once it is added up in the system, it cannot be deleted or altered. That is a core fundamental element of immutability, right? Second is transparency, right? Whenever a record is created, right, a trust is established, it should be visible to anyone without having any bias. The third aspect is a decentralization, right? Now, we should not have a single organization who's responsible for maintaining the authenticity of that particular records. It should be the duty of all the people who are involved and who should be maintaining the authenticity of the trust. These are the core principles of trust in the digital world. However, we are seeing slowly and steadily there is a corrosion which is happening. Let me introduce two areas which we see day in life. Right. The picture that you see on the screen today, right, is a product which is say Apple, which is on e-commerce platform, right? As a consumer, when I see this particular product, I see the certificates which is attached to this particular product. That's how the trust is established. That's how I buy the product. The second, for the retailer also, he's associated with that particular product using this particular trust of the brand, using the certificates which is given by the authority. Same goes with farmers who's part of this ecosystem. Now, I'm sure when you see reviews on e-commerce platform, there are a lot of fake reviews which comes up. Now, to give you a number, 30% of fake products are currently in the market in India on e-commerce platform. This is a huge number. This is where the trust is shaken. Now, why is that it's so difficult for us to not resolve this issue? Because today there is no traceability. There's no traceability of how a farmer gives this particular product to a warehouse and how it is shipped, how it is packed, and how it is delivered to the consumer. This is where the trust deficit is increasing in the e-commerce platform. The second area which I would like to highlight is much more serious, which is much more grave, is in the education system, right? Now, I know we have all seen all our certificates, which is all paper-based. The image that you see on this particular screen, which is paper-based, right? Where you see a fake and original. Now, when you use a paper-based system, there's a whole lot of forgery element that can be associated with that. Plus, this is a very manual, time-consuming uh, job of verifying each and every paper-based product. Plus, there is more element of processes which different institutions have a different mechanism, which makes it altogether difficult to identify whether this is a standard, whether this is a fake product, or whether this is a fake certificate, or whether it is a genuine certificate. Now, with the advent of generative AI, you see it's going to be very simple for all the sophisticated fraudsters to make these certificates which is fake. Is it really a cause of concern? Yes, it is a cause of concern. Let me just give you certain examples of how it is impacting. Now, if you hire an unqualified financial person in an institution, right, which is responsible for maintaining the authenticity of financial transactions, it's going to impact not only to him, his organization, as well as the complete industry. To give you an example, a reputed bank in India was fined by RBI because there was a report of fraudulent transactions being carried out by a cancelled debit card. Now, this is a recent report. Now, this could have been easily avoided because there are checks and balances. And when you have a system in which you have a question on the trust, that's how the brand damages occurs. The second element is also about public safety. Like, think about a doctor who has got a fake certificate and he is treating a patient. The kind of impact that he does to that particular institution is humongous. Right? So there is a systematic corrosion of trust in each of these particular segment. Now, do we have a solution for it? I think I'll take a pause here at this point of time, and I will introduce Mark Studio, and I'll request Sankarshan to take up the next section. Thank you. Sankarshan?
Yep. Yep. Thank you, Nupur. So, quick set of things. I will provide guidance to you, Nupur, when we want to change to the next slide. So for the moment, we're going to hold on to this, the title slide that we have. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to join this conversation where we want to talk about how organizations across are adopting secure tamper-resistant credentialing. Today, we are talking about learning and education, but tamper-resistant credentialing is a methodology that is being adopted across a wide range of business verticals. And in the future, hopefully, we're going to have more opportunities to walk the audience through in terms of how this is making an impact. Before we go into the meat of what we want to discuss today, a little bit of introduction about Dhive. Dhive is a deep tech startup. We are based out of Bengaluru. We've been building population scale trust infrastructure with the very focused approach of providing continuous assurance for data streams, specifically around the topics of verifiability, authenticity, provenance. You can find us at dhive.com. And I encourage you to go to our website and follow us on LinkedIn and other social media to get a sense of what we are doing, because this is a very interesting, evolving, emerging space. And especially in the dynamic digital economy that we all live in, there's a whole bunch of topics that enmesh together and provide very interesting opportunities to explore, to make change, make significant impactful changes, contributions, and all of that. Now, Pradeep has established a context in which blockchain capabilities are very essential in delivering some of the vital attributes for records, right? So I'm going to use that as a reference to showcase how the status quo in learning and education can be changed for the better and why it has to change for the better now. We'll move to the next slide where we will reinforce something that Pradeep brought up at the end about fake credentials. Now, credentials is not a term that we use often. So I would ask you to think of it as a synonym for the term records, because in learning and education and every other space, generally people talk about things like records. In the context of education, it could mean records such as certificates, transcripts, mark sheets, ID cards, badges, documents, and everything that is created during the learner's life cycle through an institution and beyond. Now, one of the fun aspects of this topic is that whenever we bring up the topic of fake credentials or fake records, at DWay we have been asked just how serious is this issue? And as Pradeep mentioned, this is actually serious. This is very current. The collage of newspaper articles that you see on screen are very recent. And if you are using any search engine and you search for news related to fake credentials or false credentials, you'll be surprised at the span of news articles that you come up being reported in mainstream news media. So which means it is every day, it is around us. If we are paying attention, we can see that. And the reason it is a very significant topic is because it reduces everyone's trust in the stakeholders in the system. Now, if you think about any records that are issued, there are actually three key persona or actors or roles, whatever way you want to look at it. There's always somebody who's issuing the records, producing it. So they take in raw data, they transform it into records, and they issue it to individuals or entities who are holders or recipients of these records. Now, these holders go and, for various reasons, share these records to other entities, organizations, and individuals who are the relying parties. They rely on the records to give you something. I'll give you a quick example. A student graduates from an university. The university issues them with a certificate. The student then takes the certificate and applies to a course of advanced studies. So the institute that is providing the advanced studies is actually the relying party. The student is the recipient. The original institute is the holder. Now, fake credentials are not necessarily limited to, oh, somebody had gotten a fake credential. It has wider impact, as Pradeep highlighted in his part of explaining why we are doing this. And you would really see that if we move to the next slide, which is about the challenges slide. This is the slide this is content that we already saw before. This is interesting because fake credentials are effectively identity and acclaims that are being appropriated. For instance, something was issued to me. I had shared it for wider broadcasting among my professional and peer circle on social media and other places, or perhaps I have given a copy, a photocopy of it to something. And somebody has taken that copy, appropriated my identity, made few changes, tampered with the thing, and now they have resulted in a situation where they have taken my data and have presented it somewhere else, pretending to it to be their data. Why is it possible? The interesting part is that over a period of time, as editing tools for digital content have become far more accessible, easier, rich, they have created this perverse incentive to create more tampering. And in turn, it has made it very difficult for the relying parties or the verifiers. Remember, the folks who actually receive things and verify the authenticity of it, they are facing a whole lot of challenges to be able to figure out, is this the real authentic record I'm looking at? Because if they are unable to figure that out, it is actually becomes very risky for them to arrive at a decision. Now, usually in the technical way of speaking, the decision of a yes and no is called a trust task. Because as you can see, the task is about deciding, and it is based on trust. So the relying parties have challenge in figuring out whether they should actually go down the trust task and complete it, or just let it be. And it becomes cumbersome and expensive, right? Because they engage with all sorts of outsourced companies and all of that. There's another problem that happens because in a paper or a print ready form of a record, you have to,
which is like a mandatory.
sorry, am I speaking over someone? Okay. No worries. So the print-ready form of record, what happens is that the relying parties always have to phone home to the issuer. And that's the challenge, right? So imagine you are an organization who's planning to hire 300 interns or fresh graduates in a batch. Now you have to do many phone homes to be able to figure out. So which means it's an inefficient process for you. Not only the fact it heightens your risk profile. Now the thing is, we'll go to the next slide to understand how we got here. Because you'd at this point ask yourself, Shankarshan, you're not talking anything that is out of the extraordinary from what we know, but like, okay, so what's the big deal? The question is how we got here. How we got here is very simple, right? The pace of technology took us from handwritten records to printed records using printing technology to software and digital printing records. And it has, over a period of time, created large silos of records. The problem with only paper output is that paper output is very, very fragile. All of us who have had received their certificates and degrees and all of that way back when, we know that if you had not been paying attention and keeping them properly stored, they often are torn, they are mutilated, sometimes they are misplaced and all of that. All of these things create occasions for records to be misappropriated and records identities to be appropriated. This also is, there's an incentive that now, like everything about digital records, there's a large aftermarket for that. So the secondary market for stolen records also creates this thing that there's some amount of data being stolen from here. So this is the risk within which most of the stakeholders that we described, the three main stakeholders operate. But the risk profile is highest for the issuers, and the risk profile is highest for the relying parties or the verifiers. Now, if you go to the next slide, again, you'll see that this is something Pradeep highlighted, that this is effectively something that creates a, could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, okay, thank you. So this is something that basically creates safety, business risks, and all of that. And it also creates compliance risks, right? And along with the fact that it has risks around data governance and people governance and all of that. So the entire spectrum of governance, risk, and compliance, all of those sectors get impacted if you are dealing with this ecosystem where you have unknown unknowns, like you do not know whether the record you are dealing with is authentic, whether it has integrity, which means that it is the same record that was issued. Now, I would like you to think about a record in the perspective of three important questions. One is who issued it, to whom it was issued, and whether the record that you are seeing is the exact record that was issued in the first place. So basically, the source, the recipient, and the integrity of the record. Fake credentials or forged credentials or tampered credentials impact all of these three questions. And that is why the drama happens, because you really have no way of figuring out that how you are dealing with this situation where you don't know what you are doing, and hence you have to spend time, effort, money, and everything else to be able to put de-risk your own organization. If we go to the next slide, we'll be able to look at the. This is basically the fact that we need a solution right now. And the solution has to meet certain criteria. It has to be scalable. It has to be easily available. So obviously you can't create a solution that makes it more cumbersome for organizations to adopt it, because if you create friction, they're certainly not going to adopt it, and which is going to defeat the purpose that we're talking about. And it also allows the organization to quickly on-ramp and create these digital trust ecosystems that make this change happen. We'll move to the next slide, because that is where we introduced Dewey's approach to what we are dealing with. So Mark Studio, which is available from studio.dewey.com, is the credentialing lifecycle management platform, talking about the complete lifecycle of a record. A lifecycle of a record effectively is about issuance of the record by actually bringing data in. So you bring raw data in bulk. Think about an university that is issuing graduation certificates for all courses that they offer in an academic year. Right? There's hundreds of records that they go through. So you should be able to quickly ingest all of those many hundreds of records, transform them into something that results in secure, tamper-resistant credentials, and do this data transformation at scale. So you are not doing this like over a period of 2-3 days. No, you're doing this over a time period of like a minute, 2 minutes, and even less. And this allows, and you can actually integrate it, the record issuance for the recipient or the holder, to even things like the stock wallet, digital wallets that are there on the various mobile devices, like the Apple wallets and the Android wallets. And also you can the issuer can actually issue credentials directly to those. They can also issue them as print-ready PDF format that come with a secure reference to the record being anchored on the blockchain. And it can also be done in a manner that is machine readable, which means that if you're sharing it with a endpoint that is basically a machine that ingests data and does trust tasks, you'll be able to do all of that. We'll go to the next slide on this, because this is effectively the idea that what is the benefit? Because so long what we have talked about is that we have just replaced paper record with something that we are telling is more secure. The thing is that digitally verifiable credentials offer more than just secure record keeping. It allows the recipient to also compose various acclaims that they have received into something that could also look like their portfolio or a resume and stuff like that. Right? Imagine you have received a graduation certificate, you have received some acclaims for extracurricular activities, you have done a project, you have received a recommendation from the project lead, project sponsor, and all of that. You bundle all of that, and you are now being able to share it securely with some place that is offering you a scholarship or a grant. And you are able to actually demonstrate to them that you are reducing their overhead in verifying what the data you are giving, and you are able to present in a much more rich context-filled manner to them. So it effectively creates far more opportunities for the recipient to discover new paths to career and progression and personal development. Obviously, organizations benefit from the efficiency that this brings in. And there's also another bit that we might actually explore in a different webinar, which is about how these kind of data can be used by third-party software develop companies to be able to build application systems, because now they have verifiable data sets. So it's not just about the fact that you could build for employee data, you can build HR, payroll, and VRM, vendor relationship systems, and all of that. You could do all sorts of like grants, scholarships, and all sorts of. And this is real. These are all the activities that are happening right now, and these are not things like future it might happen and all of that. We'll move to the next slide, which is kind of like a flow that shows you how this looks like. Like here, someone completes their courses. The university actually issues them with a credential that's anchored on the Cord blockchain. The Cord blockchain is a blockchain that has been developed by Dewey. The digital credential is possible to be sent in like the many ways I described to the recipient, who can then share it with various parties for a job application, for higher studies, scholarships, for loans, and all sorts of things. And this allows the verification cycle to be reduced, but more importantly, this enhances the trust and confidence in the data. Now, companies are no longer asking themselves, is this true? Is this correct? Is the data integrity maintained? Because they can figure it out. It is self-evident and embedded in the record itself, and you don't need to go through multiple hoops and all of that to figure that one out. Now, our YouTube channel has a whole bunch of bite-sized videos that can help you understand how the flows happen, how you get started, what are the steps in terms of processing of the data, transformation of the data, how do you make changes to the data, because records are always edited, updated. What happens when you update or edit a record? One of the very interesting thing that happens when you're having verifiable credentials on the blockchain is that you are always able to get the current status of the record. An example being, Let's say I had applied for a scholarship and I had received that, and hence I received a credential that says I was a scholar under this grant. Now I have taken a printout of the print ready record, and I have been circulating it to everyone to demonstrate and get other access to other services. Now, somewhere between when I received the record and today, my status as a scholar under that grant program changed. I am no longer a scholar because either something has happened. So, for instance, my record will now have to be changed to reflect that. If it was just a paper credential that I had printed and I had given it to somebody, at any point in time they wanted to figure out what is the current status, they would have to phone home and check if it is still active on a record that is anchored on the chain and has continuous assurance of data. What happens is that the verifier, regardless of whether they were given a record that was 6 months back or 2 hours back, they'll always get the correct status and the current status of what it is. So, for instance, if between the time that elapsed between my providing and sharing it with the relying party, and today, if the status has changed, the relying party, if they scan or verify the record again, they will always get the current state of what it is. So you see, it also reduces the uncertainty in what is the state of this record. Paper records have this problem that they are always a point in time in terms of when it was issued. Digitally verifiable records anchored on the blockchain change that paradigm. It is always the current state. And this is very important. Now, you might ask that this doesn't seem very significant in terms of learning and education records. But just take a small twist to whichever domain we are talking about. Think of it in terms of eligibility for a loan based on your credit score. And you realize that why that point in time data, which is current, is very necessary. And this happens everywhere. So, on the chat, we will put a link to our YouTube channel where you can go and take a look at the videos and the other stuff that we have. Now, we'll go to the next slide, which is really a small set of testimonials from among the many organizations who use Mark Studio for the day-to-day issuance and management of record. Mr. Avinash Das is from the Jaipuria group of institutions, and Anand was at Takestep when he had provided this. And as you can see, there are a few themes that get highlighted. One is the fact that it is easy to issue and manage, which is about efficiency. The other is about security and authenticity. If there are certain things that you want to leave this webinar with as a takeaway, I think these are the themes that you should keep in mind. Now, you might be wondering that all this is fantastic. This seems very futuristic. Is it really happening now? Is this impact being felt right away, right now? Is somebody doing stuff? Obviously, there are many customers who use Mark Studio and other parts of the DB infrastructure to deliver data assurance to their customers. But I would point out that the next segment in our conversation is very, very significant, because there, Palashindu from Dhive and Shailaja from Samagra are going to talk about how significant impact is and how verifiable credentials and other bits make it possible for progress to happen in a way that we can sense and see in front of our eyes, and allows us the opportunity to participate and reshape what is our present and make the future a better place. And with that, I'm going to stop. I'm still going to be around listening to the conversation. If you have questions, please put them in chat. I'll try and answer them as much as possible, or else we'll also provide a way to follow up with the answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shankarshan. Wonderful sessions and very, very insightful. I'm quite sure friends who are with me today are definitely getting enriched. Let me come directly to our sessions. And I believe this is really going to be the interesting sessions, because we are going to talk to an user of Mark Studio who has been doing it for the last few years. So today with me, Shailiza Mayal from Samagra. And to start with, I just want to give a little bit idea about what Samagra does. Many of us knows people who are associated in the many good governance as examples. They definitely must have been in touch with Samagra. But just to start with, Samagra is an consulting organizations who are helping government and many other agencies to transforms people's lives. I can give you a few examples, like how a student can make them more useful in the society, to upskilling, to making their effort and understanding in the right channel. How a housewife can make their life better and make it more meaningful to the society. How a teacher can teach the students, which can be more effective, more meaningful, and more enjoyable. And in this effort, a very nice and interesting activity is what Samagra is driving, called Samagra X. I hope I am saying it correctly. Shailiza can correct me. Shailiza is leading that initiatives across the country, and she has been associated with multiple very highest offices in the country, be it in Haryana or in Bangalore. So I will just take a pause. Shailiza, hope I have not misrepresented you. Nice to see you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Palash. Really happy to be here and share my experience with everyone.
Oh, wonderful. And we would love to hear your experience, Shailiza. So I was just looking at your experience and activities across the spectrum. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your sphere of works, how it is touching people's lives?
Yeah, sure. So, Palash, we work across multiple state governments, like you mentioned, and we work across multiple domains as well. So, right from agriculture to healthcare to education. So, we cover a lot of domains, livelihood, service delivery. The larger mission of Samagra is to improve governance, which can eventually improve the life of citizens. So, we only work with government departments. It's a governance consulting firm. And throughout this entire, it's almost been, more than a decade now, and we have worked with states like Haryana, Himachal, Odisha, UP across multiple domains. And giving you a couple of examples of the kind of problem statements that we work on. So, for example, in Himachal, we worked on improving learning level outcomes of students across the state in grade 1 to 8th. So there's a lot of research that shows that the students in a lot of schools are not at as per their grade level. So the idea there was that how can the government intervene, and what is the kind of strategy that the government should put in place to improve the learning level outcomes of students in Himachal. So essentially, we work on very systemic transformation programs, which is not just like one intervention in particular areas. So, for example, one intervention could be, train the teachers so that teachers can teach better. That could be one intervention. But only teacher training cannot really achieve the outcome, because ensuring that students are learning is a combination of multiple things. And also ensuring teachers are able to teach at the level that they are at also ensures a lot of administrative things in place. So we have, we had academic institutions, academic, interventions like improving the curriculum. And we've also had administrative interventions like teacher transfer policy. Like, how do you ensure that teachers are happy with where they are? Because there's a lot of, it's not a very transparent system how transfers happen. So these are the kind of things that we work on. In Odisha, we are working on improving farmers' income. So there is like a proper goal to it, that this is the current average income of farmers in Odisha, and we want to improve that income by so and so number. So these are the kind of problems problem statements that we work with, where there is a very direct linkage to an outcome that is impacting the lives in India.
Oh, wonderful. So basically, what I understand in multiple ways, whatever you people do is touching people's life and changing their lives for the better. Uh, so I'm very, very curious. In your entire activities, you are taking verifiable credentials, uh, and I would love to understand a little more how it is getting used and why it is getting used. If you can
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about around that.
Sure, sure. So I can also cover a little bit about how we work. So we essentially focus a lot on data, a lot on essentially generating transparency, because the moment you have transparency and you know that this data is the right data, the quality of data is high, you can take decisions on those data points. But the moment the quality of the data is compromised, or I as an official don't believe that this data has been collected in an unbiased manner, I don't want to then take decisions at a policy level on that data. So giving you an example that in Haryana, we managed to essentially bring all the schemes and services on one platform, and it was an end-to-end till the beneficiary level, the tracking used to happen. So at the state level, there was a very clear monitoring system that could see that how many applications are pending at what level. So how many applications are pending with, say, education department, how many are pending with health department. So at the state level, that review was easy to do, but that was only when you can trust that data. Because if that system is not trustworthy, if it is easy to tamper with that system, then it's very difficult to actually take decisions also on that system. Hence, verifiable credentials is like a very, I would say, a good sort of adoption that's happening by the government as well. It's not just us using it, because we closely work with the government. So you would see how the government is using this concept in the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, where they are preparing registries of healthcare providers, of doctors. And Sankarshan also mentioned before that, right? So many frauds are happening. I don't know whether this doctor is actually a doctor. So, you can just fake it. So all of these interventions are happening at the national level as well, where these registries are being prepared. One of the interventions that we were working on was Universal Learners Passbook in UP. We had done certain pilots with the government there, where the idea was that a student has all the entire journey of the student is documented, and it's kind of available in a wallet. Very similar to how DigiLocker is, right, for us. And that is something that you could trust, that if a student is moving from one school to the other, all the transfer certificates, all the mark sheets are available, and it is a trusted, verifiable credential. So all of those information is available. If I move to the college, then that information is also available. If I move to an ITI, that information is also available. And then I can choose to share. If I'm a student, I can choose to share this information with my employers. A very, very similar example that, Sankarshan showed before, I think 2-3 slides back, is what now the national government also wants to do with the APAR ID, where every student has this APAR ID, where registries are created and, data can be maintained and these records can be trusted. So these are a few examples where we have used, or we have, seen verifiable credentialing being used.
Wonderful, wonderful information, Shailiza. So what I understood from you, you were using this verifiable credential as a concept to get more transparency in the system, to understand, yes, the authenticity, the verification part and the provenance part are absolutely taken care of.
Yeah.
And once it is done, it is very difficult to tamper. So tamper resistance. These are the highlights, I believe, if I understand from you, these are the things you were looking at. So while you were looking at all those important aspect of the verifiable credentials and want to kind of instill into the system, in your view, why Mark Studio you were relying on? And being a person from the way, I would also love to learn how users seeing it from their point of view?
Yeah, yeah. So no, definitely, that's a very good question. And so we are using Mark Studio in one of our programs called the Code for GovTech initiative, where essentially we work with different developers on certain open source projects. And it's essentially, while the developers complete those projects, they get a certificate. So that certification is something that we're doing through Mark Studio. And for us, it has been very easy to actually build up the system. Otherwise, we'll have to build something from scratch, right? So it's a good platform for us to build those registries and to kind of issue verifiable credentials within like a day or so. That's the time that it took us. So the user centricity and also just the use case that it helps us enable, that was really helpful in our situation. Otherwise, we would have to build everything from scratch. So it does like most of the work for you. You just need to have the data and you can, issue out the credentials. And it also keeps the credentials for a really long time. So we don't have to worry about movement of records, data happening here and there. So it's a good way of essentially keeping records at a place, and you don't have to set up a lot of system at your own level.
So if I understand it, it is you are saying it is very useful, easy to use kind of tool. It gives you a lot of kind of comfort, eliminating multiple disconnected systems, right? And
Yeah.
help you to get a comprehensive view very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Shailaja, while this technology is all fine, and who else, other than you, can and tell us how technology is using for the betterment? And you are giving some few such examples. Can you give us such real life examples around how this Mark Studio verifiable credentials are impacting people's life? Do you have any story in mind presently, if it is handy?
Yeah. So one of the programs that I lead, which is Code for GovTech. So there we give certificates to essentially all the developers, and they are like students or young professionals who are looking to build your resume, who are looking to learn, but who are also looking to have like in a way a credit attached to the projects that they are doing and in a reliable form or so. So we've been issuing verifiable credentials to them since 2022, since we started working on this program. So it's like a summer internship program. At the end of summer internship, they get the certificates. And last year, because of some delays, we were not able to issue the credentials on time. We just gave them the digital certificates, and it did not have a QR code. It did not have like a verifiable credential. And we got requests from so many of those developers that where are we going to get the VC enabled certificates? So they're like, this is not something that we can take. When will you give us a VC enabled? And we got like a lot of follow-ups from students, from young professionals, because it's also not fair, right? If you're not giving them the credentials that they deserve, we can just give them a piece of paper, and who is going to verify it in the future, right? I don't know, where am I going to be? Where am my team going to be? We don't know them personally. Also, there are hundreds of people. So hence, that was sort of also a learning for us that at least the younger generation, they are very aware. They know that these certificates don't matter. We need the certificate which is easily verifiable. All of these PDFs and all are not going to make sense for us. So I think the demand coming from the users itself, that was really good to see. That we are in this world where people know that, okay, you need a specific kind of credential, only then it makes sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, that is a very interesting story, and that gives me a kind of memory of some of the news we have recently read in the newspaper. I remember the law students are really struggling to kind of get a registration in the Bar Council of Karnataka, because a lot of fake certificate got identified, and most of the fake certificates was from outside of the states. So they decided not to allow any students out of the out of the states. So it gives a kind of a fear in people's mind who are really having a valid certificate, but
Yeah.
not verifiable. The way your students, the way your professionals are feeling, I believe that the fear is really, really getting instilled in the society. And here is the time, I hope, the way you are articulating, the way you are explaining the importance of this verifiable credentials across the country, across the world, the educational institutes, the academias are also listening, and they are listening their students' agony, the way genuine UPSC candidates are getting, the purpose got completely defeated when a genuine person got rejected because of some fake people are coming and entering into the systems, right?
Yeah.
So there are several such examples.
Yeah, and also because there is so much, it's very dynamic, the world, right? It was in the olden times, it was very limited. So you are studying in a city, in a town, you're working there, everybody knows you. There is this whole social relationship that you have there, social credibility, social trust, which is very difficult to maintain now in a very dynamic society where I'm moving from one place to the other, and changing schools, changing colleges, changing jobs. Very difficult to verify the information.
Wonderful. So I am going back to once again your organizations, and you're really, really representing a very exciting organizations. So what are some of the game changer you are actually working on, and which are going to create an impact on the society? If you
So,
have no, I'm not sure. Sometimes it is under the NDA, but if you can share some of this interesting thing, that would be lovely to know.
yeah, no, I can definitely share that, and that also has like an angle of all of these digital public goods, right? That we are focusing on. The government is also focusing on, including the VC credentialing. So one of the things that we have recently, but not recently, it's been a year, more than a year, we have forayed into is the judiciary system. So we are working as part of a collective called Pukar, which is helping reimagine the justice system. So till now, we've been working with the executive pillar in our democracy, but now we are forayed into judiciary, where we are working with one of the high courts in Kerala and setting up a new court. How you would imagine a court process is running in one of the courts, and we have taken one case type. So one of the case types which has a lot of pendencies is the check bounce case. So we have taken the check bounce case, and we, as part of the collective with 3 other organizations, we have reimagined the entire process. In fact, it is also live in the court. So all the cases are now getting processed online, and a lot of redundancies where the lawyers or the essentially people who are filing the courts, they had to come to the court physically. They can do a lot of things online now. So the entire reimagination of the process is happening. So we are very hopeful that that sort of takes off. There is a positive feedback from there, and we can then slowly move to other case types, other states, and try to change a little bit of the judiciary system that we have right now.
Thank you, Shailaja. Wonderful. You are in the fag end of our scheduled time. I hope the
Sure.
Pukar you are making using your organization's platform is reaching to the world of, across the world, the academia and the institute of different capacities. People are listening that, and the life of the students, the life of the professionals will be much more easy with the verifiable credentials in the coming year. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Shailaja.
Thank you. Thank you so much
I'm
for
giving
this
it-
opportunity.
Thank you. I am giving it back to Pradeep and Shankarshan. If there is any question, I believe our experts are ready. They will be able to answer you. Thank you once
Yeah,
again.
we'll. I think we still have a bit of time, so we'll take a bit of questions and see how much we can answer it right now, and then the others we can get it later.
We have a first question.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll try see, instead of typing, whether I can pick up the questions and respond to them right away. So one of the questions is, how can I store verifiable credentials? One of the important things to understand is that verifiable credentials is really a specification for how data is packaged, right? And it's about cryptographically signing data so that you are storing it. Verifiable credential specification says that as long as the data is packaged in that manner, you can actually store it in multiple formats. One of the very well-known formats that where it is stored is called the JSON format. Now, verifiable credentials are stored primarily in constructs or containers called digital wallets. Now, these digital wallets could be wallets like the ones you might have used. So, for instance, if you have used a DigiYatra system, DigiYatra actually issues a verifiable credential that is stored in the digital wallets. So that's how you effectively store it. In case you don't have digital wallets, and many folks do not have because it is still an emerging space, you can issue credentials in the form that are secure PDFs which have a link to the anchor on the chain on which it was actually recorded. So I hope that answers the question about storing. If not, we'll follow up separately as well. Now, the second one is, in case of an educational institute, there will be a backlog of manually issued certificates issued in the past. Is there any way we could embed the functions to existing physical certificates? Yes, this is one of the things that comes up anytime you reach out to an educational institute who say that this point forward is fantastic. We are adopting this new technology. What are you going to do with our existing records? This is practically the answer to that, practically the same as imagine if you had gone from system A to system B for issuing and management of records. You effectively digitize the data if it is not digitized, and then issue those as verifiable credentials to the recipients. It's a long drawn process. There's a whole bunch of every institute or university and other places will have their governance related functions for it. But the very simple high level answer is that the data transformation is linked with the digitization effort. And that's how it's going. Anant is asking about, please unmute. I think you should be able to unmute yourself. I'm not terribly sure of this, but you could try that. Or if not, if you want to type the question in the chat, that works as well.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Hi, Sankshan. Thanks, Pradeep, for the awesome session. I had a couple of questions. Basically, one of the question, I mean, the way I basically understand it is that any issuing authority, whether it is a RTO office or a university or anybody who's a government authority or even a private industry who wants to issue certificates or important documents which can be used by the receiver over their lifetime. They can possibly make use of blockchain enabled certificate. Now, in a situation like this, typically, most of us on the call, I mean, some of us are also sales guys. Typically, how's the setup? I mean, the university will essentially, go. How does it actually work? So Mark Studio is, is the base product, which is going to be owned by Mumbai University or any university, or there's going to be some service provider, or how does it actually work? I mean, how does the customer take advantage of this? And secondly, we also have the digital wallet from Government of India, right? Which is DigiLocker.
The DigiLocker.
So, yeah, you want to maybe just help us understand, what's going to be the difference between the two?
So the first question is that at some point I might actually ask Paulashendu to jump in as well, because I don't want to go off rails with them. So Mark Studio is a SaaS, which effectively means like all SaaS systems, anyone who's the issuer will have their own instance where they're issuing records signed with their own keys. So that's one way of doing it. Mark Studio can also be run there are other providers who use MarkStudio based systems, and they provide it as well. So that's the thing. So effectively, like you use any other SaaS where you create an account for the organization, create all the various roles within the organization who are supposed to be dealing with the lifecycle management. With MarkStudio, you can do that as well. The cord blockchain, which anchors the record, can be run in various models. It can be run as a public chain. It could be run as a private chain. There are various pros and cons in terms of business strategies as to why you choose one over the other. I don't think this is something that we want to discuss right away in the call, but the debating would be more than happy to engage and walk through all of those details. Now, if there anything, and most of the stuff that you asked falls under Palash's wheelhouse actually. So I'm going to defer to him to provide some color to whatever I said.
No, Shankarshan, I think you have given the answer. We can definitely work along with Dhanyai, and we can reach out and understand how it is really needed. So we can actually connect offline. I believe
Yes.
we have your contacts, and we will definitely contact you offline. I am seeing another person has raised his hand. Maybe we can take that question, and maybe we can end this session.
Yeah, I think Amit has raised his hand. There are two more questions that I see. I think let's have Amit for now, and then we can conclude this session. Amit, go on.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Shankarshan, and thank you, Palash, for this beautiful session. So my question is being diverged into, I'd like to understand how this initiative is leaning towards the adoption of digital identity at scale with, a population like India. First thing. And second thing, how do you channelize your cord blockchain to have so interoperability that, people have different sort of credentials? Let's say, one authority is a financial authority, other would be a road transport authority, other would be a healthcare organization. So how do you see those channels interoperate and kind of bring together to, offer one unique credential, so that based on that particular identity or credential, the users would be actually identified and kind of get known on those particular specific credentials?
So I think this is a fairly deep question that drives very well down into that way of how we see identifiers and how we see identifiers as linked to the entity, organization, or a person. So for the purposes of our conversation today, I'm going to highlight three specific themes. One is that at the end of the day, for any business case that you see, it is effectively you are trying to transform a record as a raw data to something that is far more, has authenticity and provenance built into it. You're using blockchain as a medium to deliver those capabilities. Pradeep started out his exposition highlighting those very key capabilities right out of the gate, because that's very important to set context for. Now, the second thing is digital identities and identifiers are multiple things, and any single object could have multiple identities associated with it, as long as they are, in some cases, they need correlation. In other cases, they do not need correlation. As long as you are able to be to figure out whether a particular identifier is linked in a manner that it can be traced when the traceability is required, you should be able to do that. Blockchain is one way of enabling that thing. The last point I would mention is that there is this idea in the DLT world that you would have this one ring to rule them all kind of DLT. That doesn't really happen. Effectively, for various business domains or verticals, the capabilities are extended through modularity and extensibility. Cord uses a concept called pallets. Like you have pallets for goods. So pallets are effectively the condensed business logic, rules, and all the stuff that is required for particular domains. So for instance, if you're handling FSI and they have fintech has various kinds of requirements, you might have pallets specific to fintech. If you're doing supply chain, you would have pallets specific to supply chain, and so on and so forth. But what you ask, I think, gives us an opportunity to explore it with the team in detail when we do workshop specific and drive deeper down into how CORD actually enables what we call the open trust infrastructure and addresses all of these verticals. Now, in case, okay, I think we did that.
Yeah. So Sankarshan, I think we're well above the time. I would just take one question, last question, okay? And that is, I think from Monica, she's saying, can we see the record on the blockchain? That's a simple one, Sankarshan.
You can absolutely see that. Any blockchain comes with a concept of a blockchain explorer. Every blockchain has that. They call it in various names. Some call it scan, some call it explorer. CORD calls it explorer. So every record that you issue, you can actually have a reference right down to the block where it was written and the event and the transactions. And the explorer is publicly available. So practically, if we are issuing certificates for, let's say, this particular session that we are having, you can go down to the explorer and figure out, okay, this was the record of the event. And it's actually very important because you know what? In many cases, people ask us, you said all of this fantastic thing. How do I not know that you have 15 people writing it down some places and there's an actual blockchain running?
Yeah, interesting. All right. So I think with that, I would like to, conclude this session. I would like to thank Palash, Sankarshan, and Shailaja, for sharing such a good insight. Okay. And thank you everyone who has been patiently listening to all the conversations and, have been so many calls, so many chats that I see here. Thank you everyone for your time. You guys have a good one. With that, we're signing off. Thank you.
Thank you so much.